Button pushed. We're good to go. We're on.
Hey, thanks. It is Wednesday. No, it's Thursday, November 3rd. Thanks, everybody, for coming to the meeting. Let's see. I don't think we have any updates from the PNC this week, unless anyone else has anything they want to add. We can start on infrastructure. Nate is in a meeting that's running long right now, but let's see if we have any follow-ups from the Backdrop Pantheon Drush saga. I don't know where we're at with that, Jeff, but you probably know better than I do.
I got a response from someone, I guess senior at Pantheon. It was a pretty detailed response. I read it, but I didn't have a chance to respond. But basically, we need to just tell them our use case and what we're after, and then we kind of have two courses of action. We can file a feature request with Pantheon, which I guess takes a while, and there's no guarantee that it will be approved. But that might be a good thing to keep in our back pocket anyways, to see if we want to go that way. And then there were some other suggestions that I have to go through and figure out if they're going to work for us. But in the short term, I think if we leave the active config in the files directory, that will be sufficient for most sites. And if you're not using version control, I don't think it matters. Just leave it how it is out of the box. And if you are, put your staging directory below the web root. And I think that will work, although I need more testing on that, particularly in going from the dev environment to the test environment. And I don't have any live sites on Pantheon, but if we get that far, I can test it. But I think theoretically it's going to work out, since the code's going to move up to test, but files are going to be pulled down from live if you choose to even pull them at all. And then you can just do an import, which should pick up your staged stuff in the code and go to the live. So I think that should work fine, right? There is more testing needed there. I have a config workflow video in the agenda that I would love for anybody here that's using version control to try out. Wes and I were chatting about that a bit. So if you get a chance, Wes, if you could pull down that patch and give that a go with the stuff you're working on, that would be great.
Yep, it might be a little while, but I plan to.
No worries. Understood.
So have you run into the problem, Jeff, where if you pull your files, you break your site because they get the active directory?
There's been all kinds of weirdness that has occurred in Drupal and in Backdrop, depending on if and when you're being careful and how many people you're working with. Yeah, there's some human workflow stuff that you have to agree to. Also, if you have a 2 or 3 or 5 person team. Yeah, but in Drupal, we installed some modules, and the enabling of the modules is stored in config. And then, so we enabled the modules manually on our dev site, but then when we push it up, it tries to enable them, but doesn't go through the install script, and then the whole site's broken. So you have to remember to manually enable those modules and then import the config. So there's just been some weirdness, but in fairness, we had weirdness like that with features also, where there was just order of operations stuff that had to be adhered to, possibly differently on different deploys depending on what's in the deploy.
So this is the same problem for Drupal 8 as it is for Backdrop right now on Pantheon with the files writable saving config issues.
Not exactly. There's some workflow stuff that you have to be. The advantage that Drupal has is they ended up with the active storage being in the database, so they don't have the problem of worrying about where and if the active storage is versioned or not, because it's in the database. So the only thing that's versioned is the equivalent of our staging. So they version the staging, you push that up, and when you do an import, it imports from files to database. So there is no, they don't have to have any file system stuff that is out of version control. And the only thing that's out of the web root is the staging config.
Okay, so they don't have any writable files interpolate anymore that aren't
just only in the files directory, which is what Pantheon allows.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I think maybe it would be great to write up currently that you should never use that files button with backdrop, or you're likely to blow your whole site away somewhere in documentation until we can figure it out. It does also look like Pantheon's working on, they have a feature request for the Pantheon YAML file to add a new location of the files directory, which will, I think, unblock us a little bit. So right now, backdrop sites have like a custom implementation of where the files directory is. But if there can be a defined location of where the files directory is, that means that they will have the ability to make wherever that is writable. So there might then, after that is done, become an option for creating another writable directory somewhere for something for whatever purpose. So I think we should wait and see what happens down the road. And I think, like we've said, I think out loud, that the process is, if you're on Pantheon, the only safe way to move your config around is to use the user interface, which is fine. I was kind of hoping we would be able to find some like hacky thing we could do with the settings.php file that would make the Pantheon UI just kind of work. But it looks like that's not really going to be an option yet. But yeah, I know you and Wes are working on Pantheon, figuring out Pantheon, and also figuring out Calabox. And Wes said he was interested in writing up some documentation on kind of how to do that, best practices, which I think would be great, just in general, once we get figured out. So thank you guys for powering through on that. Also, it sounds like the like Drush 8 support stuff we're working on, is that also blocked by switching, like the same kind of issues we're having with the, like waiting on the Pantheon YAML to be fully supported so that we can make, like, I don't know, I feel like there's a whole bunch of stuff that's kind of blocked on what Pantheon's working on, including getting Drush support there.
The dashboard functionality doesn't work when we reverted to get back to the state that we were in, that people could install backdrop sites and that stuff. People can use Drush on Pantheon. They have to use a site local Drush, which is, I think, documented in the Pantheon docs. And I wrote a blog post there on Backdrop CMS that shows you how to do that. So we don't have it out of the box when they spin up Backdrop, but if somebody wants to follow those instructions, they can have a site local that they can run Drush commands through Terminus or site aliases against their Backdrop sites.
I think I've also been able to get it to work just using Terminus without a local version. Is that right?
Oh, I haven't tried that.
Yeah, but it didn't, like, I couldn't, like, I had to use Terminus in order to get that version working. But I think that's right. I don't remember. But anyway, it sounds like there's been a ton of work done on Pantheon and Drush and Calabox lately, and I just want to thank both of you for pitching and helping us figure out how to get that going. So great work, guys. Next on the agenda is Backdrop website. I don't think there's been any progress on this since last week. We have a content type called Showcase, so if anyone has Backdrop sites they want to show off, we can put them up there. We need to have words written with them, not just pictures, in order for the Showcase section of the site to be super compelling. I know I am guilty of just putting pictures of sites up there. I have to go back and write some content. And then as soon as we get a handful of those, we should launch the Showcase section. I know for right now we have a page up at /Showcase that just is like a list of the nodes. That'll turn into a view, and we have designs, it'll turn into like a landing page. And we have designs for that, they just haven't been implemented yet. So that's next and last part of that. Documentation, Tom, you're here. Do you want to give us an update on where things are with the documentation pages?
Sure. We're going through, I wasted some time looking at trying to get Colorbox to work, and then finally I just gave up on that. I'm up through layouts right now, and I'm on add-ons for modules, themes, and layouts as far as the user guide itself. One of the questions I had was regarding the deep dives and trying to keep those consistent. The subtopics, like under creating content, did we want to keep those in order, or what was the thought behind doing those as subtopics?
So I'm not sure if Dr. Lamont has a plan for this or not. He pumped in the last meeting for a couple minutes, so he might show up here too, and we can ask him again if he does. What I was thinking is that we want to make the top level pages, the not deep dive pages, as unintimidating as possible. So easy to just kind of read the whole thing and cover the most common use cases. And when we get to something crazy like using book module or a more complicated example, we want that to still exist in the documentation, but we don't want it to be so intimidating that when someone lands on the front page, they see all of it. So I think some of those deep dive pages were ones that I had split off where I was like, this isn't necessarily related to the topic, but it's great that it exists and I don't want to lose it. So I kind of put it one page deeper. As far as how those are organized, I would say if there's a way to keep them in order, that's good. If it becomes difficult, as long as people can get to the deep dive page from the parent page, that's fine, whether it's a link in the text, like see more on this, and there's a link, or if it appears in the menu, that's also fine. I would defer to you guys to try and figure out the best way to organize all of the information. I just wouldn't want to lose any of it.
Okay, I got it. The only time it became confusing is when you were going next from page to page at the bottom. You would go from something simple to the very next page would be very complex.
So we might be able to fix that with the next button. Like if the next button only went forward and didn't go down.
That would work.
Okay. How many levels are there? Like is it we stop at the second level, or is it, like I don't want to accidentally miss like an entire section. There's only 2 levels.
There's only 2 levels.
Okay, so that's fine. We can definitely do that then. Would you do me a favor and create an issue somewhere to fix that next button, and I can tackle that.
Sure. We'll do that.
Something related, in Drupal.org, I think they have tags for documentation, beginner, advanced, intermediate. That helps. So before the person starts, they know what to expect. So if they see something that's tagged as advanced, maybe they just skip it instead of start reading it and getting frustrated.
That's a good idea. I know we have one. I think we only have one tag on documentation right now, and it's whether it's like in progress or completed. We should add another one for what level. For right now, if we only have 2, maybe we should just have like introduction and advanced. And then if we start getting more pages in here in the future, we can add additional levels as necessary. Does that sound reasonable to you guys? Okay.
That could work, yeah.
All right, I'm gonna just open that page right now so I don't forget. Okay. That's fantastic. I can't wait to get documentation linked. Do you think we're close enough to do that yet, Tom? Or do we still need a landing page made for it?
I don't think we need a landing page necessarily, just a link to it out of the side menu. And really, I'd say by Monday, you should be able to put it up no matter how. I mean, everything that's there makes perfect sense and it's ordered correctly. So even if we're in the midst of changing it as we go, there's nothing there that's shown as incomplete.
Okay, that's great. All right. Let's move on to Backdrop CMS itself. let's see. So 1.5.1 is out. We've updated the Docker image. We've pushed to Pantheon. All that's left to do, based on the release of Backdrop 1.5, is the blog post, which we actually have a draft of. I'm going to post a link here in the chat. Anyone who is an editor should be able to review it. There's one section at the top that says add some text on heroes, but the rest of it is pretty close. But I would love, I just kind of, Nate wrote the whole thing and then Firefox ate the post. And so then I had him put just the images back up because I needed to link those into the newsletter. So now we just have to flush out the text here a little bit. So if anyone has anything they want to add to this post, feel free, edit it. We'll get it published probably today or tomorrow.
Jen, I also started writing one. Sorry, I didn't communicate that. Maybe double effort there. But what stopped me and then I got lost was I wasn't sure if I was going to write or mention 151 because what would be the blog post about? Because 1.5.1 was already out. So is it 1.5.0 is out or 1.5.1 is out?
If we just say 1.5 is out, then it doesn't matter which minor version we're on. So that's kind of what.
Yeah, because the previous one mentioned the bug fix number at the end as well. But
yeah.
Yes, maybe we can change that and say it because usually after release, maybe 1 week or a few days after we release the bug fix. So maybe just drop the bug fix.
Yeah. And also we looked on the website in the content list to see if anyone had started on this and didn't see it. And so that's why I had him write it all over again. So in the next time, if you're working on it, even if it's just a draft, just put an unpublished node there, even if you're working in a Google Doc or wherever else you normally work that says, I'm writing this, or just something somewhere so that we don't duplicate effort again. So we can see it. But that's great. And I would love it too if you wanted to take on the writing of blog posts after minor releases in the future. So like so we don't have to worry about this for 1.6. I don't know what your schedule's going to be like in January 15th, but if possible, it would be great if you would take on the writing of that. And then if you can't do it for any reason, let us know. And then we can kick it back to Nate. Okay. Fantastic.
Probably do that, yes.
Where are we? So blog post is coming out, newsletter also coming out, and that will be the last two things for 1.5, and then we can start focusing on bug fixes as needed. So right now under important bug fixes, the one thing that we're not quite committed to is our fix for the full bleed hero image. We have 4 solutions, 4 pull requests in the queue. One of them I think Wes has agreed to in theory, but I'm not sure I've had a chance to review the code, which is creating a new theme hook suggestion for the front page when it is using the 1-column boxed-in layout, overriding that one template in Basis and making the hero region full width. I think there might have been one issue with that pull request in that the region that the hero block is placed into is below the breadcrumb and the messages, so it looks a little weird. If you like clear the cache or something, you can see the message isn't full bleed and then the hero is full bleed. So just kind of trying to figure out if we should make all of that full bleed or move things around or what. We could definitely do that in that template file too, now that we have the template file. Okay. Backdrop 1.6, we have added a ton of things to the list that we want to do with Backdrop 1.6. I'm not sure we're going to be able to do all of them, but just to run through them really quickly. Some of the things we shouldn't talk about in depth that we want to do is, let's see, improving the rich text editor. We always want to improve that. So if anyone finds any issues with it in this release cycle, we can work on those and get them in 1.6. Trying to figure out page title, tabs, and action links. I think we have a theoretical solution for those. Right now, they're placed on the layouts. We could instead create, or in addition, create blocks. And if somebody placed a block for one of those items, we wouldn't show the variable in the layout file. that would be a backwards compatible way to add those items to the page. Block copy and region copy, this is an issue that was introduced or became important in Backdrop 1.5. Now that we ship with 2 layouts out of the box for the front page, people are going to notice really quick if they change menu settings on one, they're not changing menu settings on the other because those menu settings are not recycled or inherited or copied. They are 2 distinct placements. But if we can come up with a way to make one of those a copy of the other one, then changing it in one place will change all of it. So if we can find a way to copy a block, or even better, copy an entire region, that would solve that problem. Entity view modes, this is a no-brainer. Everybody loves entity view modes. There's a Contrib module for Drupal 7. We just need to take a look at that and figure out what that would look like if added to core for Backdrop. File entity solution, some kind of media type module. We want to take the first step towards media in 1.6, which is just building a user interface that'll allow people to access and edit and delete their files. Right now there's a sort of a major bug in that if you add a block with an image and then delete it, you delete the block, you don't ever delete the image. So people can still access that image after the fact. So we need to fix that. Things we might want to talk about in more detail. Most important things on here, adding entity reference module to core. Mike, I don't know if you have any updates since last week. I think last week we were at a point where we needed more testing. So we have a module that you can install and run on your sites. I don't know if anyone's got a chance to test it then.
It looks like Klonos got a chance to test it, or at least go into the issue queue and talk about it. And I'm not sure if anyone else has managed to test it out. Obviously, Klonos found the problem of the circular references right now. So if you have an entity that references the original entity and try to render them, the system gets quickly bogged down. So we need to figure out a way to detect circular references with the reference field. I haven't had a chance to figure out a way to do that yet. So if anyone has any suggestions on just where in the rendering pipeline we'd want to try to figure out if a reference, like we might want to just have it so a reference field will check the entity is rendering and disable any other reference fields. Or maybe have it when you choose which view mode to render, not let it choose view modes that have an entity reference displayed or something. I'm not sure. So if anyone has any ideas, or if they've seen how any other reference fields handle this, it would be appreciated.
Okay, I have an example from Drupal 7 that might not be relevant, where I put a recursion stop in a rendering node that rendered an entity that was the entity I originally started in, which might be useful. It won't help you to find where in the render, well, it might. I don't know how similar your rendering is to Drupal 7's entity rendering, but I can just say that.
Yeah, I'm literally just calling the entity render function, so it's I'm not doing anything special right now. So
okay, I'll send that to you and let you take a look at it.
Okay. Yep. And if anyone else wants to take the module out for a spin, I wouldn't. It's not production ready yet. But if you want to build it into a dev site or a test site or something you're playing with, like, you know, that's not, the basic architecture is fine. We might find some bugs, but it's sort of ready. Like, I don't think we're going to change any of the like fields or how things work. So it's sort of, I'd say, in alpha right now.
Okay, that's great.
And it's at backdrop-contribs on GitHub, and just reference is the name of the repository. It doesn't have a release because we don't necessarily want people installing it from, you know, yet through the project manager. But yeah, if you search GitHub for the module, it's there.
Great.
Yeah, if we don't have releases, then the simple users, the beginners, won't be able to find it. They have to go to GitHub. I mean, if we make it a better, a better release, have them get you more testers that will be able to kick the tires. But then we'll have to do an upgrade path. Yeah, that's the problem.
Anyway, it's not ready yet for beginner people or production sites, so that's why we're not doing a release yet. But if you guys truly know what you're doing, can go in there and try it out. That would be helpful.
Yep.
Okay.
And something that's related to that, I don't know if you want to do that in the 1.6.0 release cycle. Depending on how soon we have it, sort of like a beta state, we might want to turn the terms into reference. And then there was this related idea of maybe we're exploring that, turning comments into referenced entity, something. That was an idea. That's not.
Yeah. So I would say the big thing about the taxonomy fields is that they have a different widget. They have a widget that selects items when you submit the form just based on name, because taxonomy entities, unlike other entities, have to have unique names. Whereas, it's slightly different that, and the widget lets you, the widget currently lets you type in new, create new taxonomy terms just by typing them into the field. So, like, this isn't stuff that happens. The question is, like, it has a bunch of functionality that just regular entity reference doesn't handle, because the regular entity reference won't necessarily be creating new entities and won't be, like, having like free typing and stuff like that. If we want to build that into the entity reference widget, that might be the case, but I'm not sure how much that functionality is useful for non-taxonomy uses. Like, would we want it to have, like, do we want to have it so, like, if you type a node name into an entity reference field and it doesn't exist, it creates a node for that? So, I mean, I guess that's something to look at.
What did they?
It might also be possible to leave that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Gregory.
In Drupal 8, how did they solve that issue? I mean, in Drupal 8, if I'm not mistaken, taxonomy is already a term reference. How did they solve that issue? Because it's really interesting. I didn't think of it, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how they handle it. I haven't actually used taxonomy in Drupal 8 yet. But I have a client site who is using that, so I can take a look at how it works on that. Okay, I'll take a look at that. Quite frankly, I would just I'm not in a rush to replace the taxonomy reference field just because it does have the additional functionality in it. I'd rather test sort of the initial reference field as is before trying to, move more responsibility onto it.
I think that sounds good. I think there's probably also a way that we could provide an additional widget that maybe remains part of taxonomy module or something that can figure out if a taxonomy entity is referenced and only then become available. But I don't know for an upgrade path, like, I don't think we should introduce an upgrade path from the taxonomy term reference field to the entity reference field after it goes into core. So we either need to do it or not do it. I don't think we can put it in core and not do it, and then a year from now be like, oh, by the way, we've moved all of your taxonomy term fields into entity reference fields. That would need to be a separate module that would do the migration or something at that point. So.
Yeah, I guess there's the question of whether, I haven't actually looked at the taxonomy reference module to see if there's any actual schema differences in how it stores its data. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, we can figure out upgrade path once we figure out if this is, like, when we're done.
But anyway, another thing that we need to do for reference is add all of the testing. And I still haven't figured out how the best way to manage all of that is. So I could definitely use help if people are used to setting up, like, testing for modules. And also just coming up with a list of things that we should test for to make sure that we get all of the cases of things that could possibly break.
I'll tack onto that too. So I looked at reference in the issue queue over the week, which is awesome. Thanks, Mike, for your work there. I applied, you had a couple of core requests. One was to fix the return arguments from the file entity, and that was a trivial one, so we got that fixed. The make files act the same way as everything else as far as running the return value through the URL function. I ran into a number of snags there. I think for now, and maybe even for the version that goes in core, we might need to just accommodate for files as being, like when we need to make a link to a file, it just operates differently, unfortunately.
Okay.
Which is probably what you're doing right now.
Yeah, I have like a little chunk of code in there saying like, leave this in until it's fixed.
yeah, which it might be there for a while.
Okay.
Okay, I'll try to help on testing. My hope had been to actually get a little deeper, but I got totally derailed by trying to fix that core issue that started out, I thought it was going to be trivial, and then it got not trivial.
Well, thank you for taking a look at that. What's the current workflow for running? Do we have any workflow for running automated tests on Contrib modules?
We do not yet.
Yeah.
The best thing to do is to take a look at the, we don't have a Travis file anymore. You can run tests locally, not through the UI, but through the shell scripts. And if you tack on there's great documentation in the run tests.sh script. And if you tack on the like -- cached or -- cache flag, it speeds up test running by like 20 times if you run the entire core suite. So I would say if you need to run tests locally, do what the test bot does and use the testing scripts with a high level of concurrency and with the cache flag. And that's it's not ideal because you still need to run them manually, but it shortens the test run time from being like an hour to like 5 minutes, even on a local. So. Okay.
So, but then it sounds like, yeah. So I guess I just have to figure out how to get tests running on my local thing, but that sounds like a good, yeah. So this is the script. It's in the scripts directory, in the core scripts directory?
Yep, that's right.
Okay. I did not know about that.
Yeah, actually, here we go. I was thinking you might be able to look at a log from the test bot and get the command out of there, but it looks like it doesn't show you the commands either.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, run that shell script from the command line, and then it will give you documentation on how to actually execute it.
Okay. Do we have something in development docs about doing this?
I just put it in the chat.
Oh, that's right. What? You said you put it in the chat?
Yeah, it's in the Hangout chat.
Oh, just linking literally directly to the script file. Brilliant.
Yeah, okay. I made you put that in because I was having trouble with that.
Oh, that's right. Oh, well, very nice.
So we have a page on API backdropcms.org under developing modules called testing framework. And right now it says in progress. So we should probably
a little cross-linking.
I don't think it's actually in progress. I'm thinking I was actually working on it, so maybe we should add this stuff to that page.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent suggestion. Okay.
That's the first place I went. It was not there.
Okay, anything else on entity reference?
Just reference. Stop calling it entity reference, even though it does reference entities.
Actually, reference is a much better name.
Yeah.
Okay, so other things we should probably talk about, menus and breadcrumbs cleanup. Menus are supposed to be what powers breadcrumbs, so I think like in the back end, they're the same. On the front end, there's kind of a UX nightmare going on. Clonos created this excellent issue on what's wrong from a user perspective in terms of navigating the page. I think it would be great to kind of give that a little more focus and make things make more sense to people. But yeah, it's something that's bothered me, I think, since the Drupal 6 that changed the menu and everything got all weird, and then there all these weird menu breadcrumb module solutions came out, and yeah, we should figure that out. There's issue number 523 if anyone's interested in reading up and helping on that. And then the other biggie for 1.6 is adding a system of pageless nodes. So how do you create a thing that has lots of fields and is versioned and has author information, but does not have a URL to it? We have a lot of solutions for this in Drupal. We have a module called Rabbit Hole that will just make the path return like a 404 if you try and go to it, or redirect you somewhere else or whatever else. There's a module called Bean that creates a block. It's an entity. There's an entity construction kit solution that will let you build whatever kind of entities you want. We need to figure out which path forward makes the most sense for Backdrop and try and start moving towards getting something implemented, which we can then, number one, put in core, number two, use to build a carousel type thing, and then put that carousel type thing in core as well, as an example of how to use these pageless node things. So I don't know where we stand on that, if that's something we should have a whole separate conversation about, just to try and figure out what entity type thing we're going to use.
I think we're waiting for someone to come up with a proof of concept on any one of those paths, but nobody has time
Well, I
for
wouldn't
it yet.
want somebody to spend like a week coding something and us being like, no, veto, don't like it.
Yeah.
All of these solutions are pretty big in terms of how to come up with a prototype.
I would say the one thing different that we discussed over the past week is started discussing basically what one of the things that we're describing with these like pageless node things are comments, and whether comments become one of these things.
Yeah.
Because basically that's what they are. They're like, you know, a entity type that doesn't have a page. It's just referenced from another entity. And, you know, maybe convert comments to that, or whether.
Do we still have that setting in Backdrop that does give comments their own page, or did we remove that in Backdrop?
Comments have their own page. They have a page, but then it displays the whole node. So comments have a URL. But it just displays the node that they're connected to.
It's their permalink, isn't it? Isn't that?
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I, for one, would not be sad about comments losing their unique page if we turned that into some kind of a like anchor link on the page in which they were posted. I don't know what the use case is for comments having their own page, though.
Well, they don't have their own page. They just have an own URL that then displays the page. So it displays, yeah.
But it could be just the node URL.
Yeah.
I don't know. We should look.
I mean, I ran into this when I was, you know, trying to, you know, because doing the reference, because you can reference comments, like, you know, right now it is calling comments /1 or something like that as the URL when you link to them. Yeah, basically we did have a bunch of we did have tickets in the queue about comments, and it seems like, and I'm not sure if this can actually be done until Backdrop 2, because, you know, speaking of API changes, but like the way that comments work and the fact that they're only able to be added onto nodes and not arbitrary entity types is kind of weird. And the fact that it creates a new bundle for comments for each different content type, because you want, like, it just assumes that you want to be able to set different fields for each content type a comment is on. And all those assumptions seem like ridiculous, that, like, you know, you should be able to, if you are going to create different bundles of comments, just be able to choose between like several standard ones or one standard one, and you should be able to link them to any entities. So, like, we sort of have to figure out if we can actually make a change to this whole structure, which is ridiculous, in Backdrop 1 without, like, breaking the API too much.
I agree. I think there's an issue we created either shortly before or shortly after Backdrop 1 came out, where we're like, comments are stupid, we need to fix them. And then we decided it was too much work. But yeah, all of the things you're talking about are a little weird. And this is all just left over from comments predating the entity system. And then when they got turned into entities, they were just kind of glommed on where they were used rather than being made like standalone, flexible, whatever. I also don't know how much of that can be changed without breaking APIs. But it would be good to figure that out. I also really like the idea of comment being a standalone entity thing without a page that you can attach somehow to any other entity. But I have no idea how we get there from where we are now. Do we have any other use cases for things that should maybe be these pageless node things? So we've got comments and like a block type thing we want to add.
Yeah, and the slideshow.
Slideshow,
the images of the slideshow. That's the one.
Yeah.
So the other question I brought up in the issue is like, for putting the whether it has a page or not aside, like, would these pageless nodes have a different database schema than nodes right now? Would they have, like, we have all the regular attributes in the node table, like created, the author, revisions, status and stuff. Would these pageless nodes actually have like a different? Would their base table look any different than nodes?
So what the node base table includes right now is a unique identifier, a version identifier, a type, a language, a title, the person who created it, its status of published or unpublished, when it was created, when it was changed, whether it has comments and the status of those comments, enabled, disabled, or hidden, promoted or not promoted, sticky or not sticky, and the translation node ID, and I don't know what translate is, maybe like it's an integer, I don't know, stands for something. The weird thing would be if comments became pageless nodes, then we would have a comment status on a comment.
Well, yeah, it seems like having a comment status on that base table is kind of ridiculous to begin with.
Yeah, that might be part of our fix for comments too. Like if the comment contained what it pointed to rather than the thing containing whether it has a comment. But that, I think everything else in there seems kind of reasonable for a generic node type thing.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I'd say whether, like, if we're talking about making nodes being able to say, oh, this doesn't have a page. But I mean, it seems like if the things that we're creating are exactly the same in terms of the base table, it wouldn't make sense to create a new entity. It almost seems like it makes sense to create a new entity when, yeah, I don't know. Like in terms of creating a new entity with a new database schema, that seems weird if it's going to be exactly the same.
Yeah, I wanted to explore the idea of when you add a new node type, just turn path module off for that node type. I never got around to exploring that though.
Do you think that's going to be a lot of work to do that?
I feel like that will be the least amount of work out of all the possible things so far. But
yeah. I
don't know that for sure because I haven't really dug at it.
And like, is it that important for these things not to have pages? Like,
yeah. Historically, my use cases have just been like, I don't want public-facing people stumbling across those. So it's, I mean, important kind of depends on your client. Like,
I mean, I think there are other solutions to that problem, right? And Rabbit Hole is a great example. And like Daryl mentioned this at Badcamp too, like just put Rabbit Hole in core might be a good path forward for us, where it's like on the path settings for the content type, you just decide, does it have a path or not? And if not, what should it do, right? Just like Rabbit Hole does now, where it's like, oh, we could do a 404, we could do a redirect, we could do an access denied, we could do whatever, and just put that setting on that page and maybe problem solved. So that would be a great backwards compatible solution where then we could have default node types that were slideshows or maybe not comments yet. But,
well, here's the thing: is we have I think the entity system assumes that entities have a path. I know that when I'm building the reference module, that we have the formatter that displays a list, and it just assumes right now that it gets the entity path from the entity and creates a link to it. So if we have having entities without paths is actually not only just creating a new entity type or editing node, it's actually sort of making a change to the entity system itself. And that we have to actually look at what it means to the entire entity system if we want to have an entity without a path. We might want to just leave the entities with the path and instead control access to that path more stringently than right now.
Yeah, I think that's what Rabbit Hole does.
Yeah.
So if we wanted to go that way, it would be an access on an existing path, which is fine. It also, and I'm not sure because I haven't looked into entities as much as you have, Mike, but it might also be possible that we could just put some change to the root entity class that says if there's no class, return false, and then everywhere that it's expecting a path, we add a behavior that if it gets false back instead of a path, it does something different.
Yeah.
I don't know. That could break who knows how much other stuff, but.
But at least it would only break it if you were using the new feature, right?
True.
Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like we have a couple of things to look at. Jeff, I don't know if you're going to have time to try a rabbit hole type solution for that anytime soon. Anyone else who wants to get into it, that sounds like I agree, the least effort going forward. It would also be interesting to see whether we should do an access-based approach or not. But yeah, that's a doozy in terms of, I'm not sure we're going to get that done by 1.6, but it would be great if we could have a roadmap for how to get that done.
Real quick, Michael, I see W view. Yeah, anyways, real quick, I just created an issue in the reference queue because I quickly checked in Civil Test Me. Drupal 8 does have term as the entity reference, and the autocomplete does allow you to create new entities of that type. I don't know if they're special casing just the term reference, the tags, or they allowed it in general, but we can look at how they do it.
All right. Is there anything else we should talk about for new features for 1.6? I know we're kind of almost out of time here. I think we've made some kind of good progress just talking about stuff we talked about today.
What do we have to provide upgrade paths for reference module? There's a node reference in Contrib. Is there a user reference? I didn't see when I took a quick look.
Yeah, I think it's in the project. I'm not sure it's ported or anyone's using it. I think that we do need to provide some kind of upgrade path. Is there an entity reference in Contrib too?
I don't think so.
Okay.
So there's not an entity reference because we don't have because we didn't port over the entity API in Contrib with all the metadata wrappers and stuff like that.
Okay.
There's references.
Yeah, references is I'm using that on a couple of sites, but I'd also be happy to help work on an upgrade path there too.
Yeah, I would almost say that instead of an upgrade path, we almost, like I mentioned sort of the idea before of a conversion path, and figure out how to, because basically I don't think we want to just automatically change everyone's. There are slight differences in how the user interface and stuff works for the different user reference and node reference and stuff like that. I think that we shouldn't just assume that they want to upgrade it, and that we should instead provide sort of a conversion path that allows people to convert their field from one type of, basically a field conversion module that we might want to look at using.
Not sure that meets the matches the philosophy of Backdraft, but we can talk about it when we get done.
Yeah.
Figure out what kind of mess we're in when we get there.
Okay.
We also might look at how many people that upgrade is actually going to affect. Maybe it's going to be a non-issue.
And Drupal 7 people, are we planning on handling that? Or, because they could have anything, I guess. They could have user reference, node reference. Well, I guess we just have to think about it.
So there's 17 active sites running references on Backdraft. Yeah, coming from 7, I think, is a bigger issue. Okay, we'll figure it out. Anything else on 1.6? I think we should move on to community growth.
Okay, I'll go quick over that. Yep. So we have 327 total projects on Backdraft JMS. That's plus 6 since last meeting. 386 total user accounts plus 2 since last meeting. 58 Contrib authors. Welcome to Jack Aponte. And the total count of the core downloads went to 7,128, which is plus 90 since last meeting. That's it.
All right. Upcoming events. Only thing really worth mentioning is the Nonprofit Developer Summit. If you are in the San Francisco Bay Area in 2 weeks, that's going to be fantastic. Highly recommended. We had a great time there last year. Okay, I guess that's it. Does anyone else have anything they want to add for this week's meeting? Okay, let's stop the broadcast and we will see everyone next week, if not before. And then stay on afterwards if you want to help us figure out if we should talk about anything specific next week. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Okay.